The movie begins with the main character, Michael Woods, speeding through the streets of Johannesburg with the police hot on his tail. As he swerves recklessly through the traffic, narrowly avoiding collisions, a helicopter joins the pursuit. Despite nearly crashing when a truck blocks his path, Michael continues to evade the law. For context, Michael is a recently released parolee who has just arrived in Johannesburg to meet his ex-wife, Angie, who works at the U.S. Embassy. After picking up a rental car at the airport, Michael quickly realizes that the rental company has given him the wrong vehicle, but since he's already running late due to his delayed flight, he decides to keep the minivan and drives off. On his way to the embassy, he struggles with the unfamiliar road signs and while checking the map, almost crashes into another car before realizing he needs to drive on the left side of the road. Stuck in traffic a short while later, Michael accidentally bumps into a cyclist. Apologizing immediately, he reminds himself to avoid trouble. He then calls his ex-wife, Angie, to let her know he'll be even more delayed. Skeptical, Angie asks if he's been drinking, but Michael assures her he's there to make things right after waiting 18 months for this moment. Determined to see her, he ends the call and glances at the map once more. As Michael tries to get his bearings, he hears a phone ringing. Digging through the glove box, he finds a cell phone with a cryptic new message instructing him to keep things clean. This mysterious turn of events sets the stage for the chaos that follows. Bewildered, he drives slowly ahead, only to be stopped by a child hawker trying to sell him a portable charger. While she keeps him engaged, her accomplice at the open passenger side window sneakily steals Michael's sunglasses. With not much he can do, he continues his drive. However, the surprises do not end here for Michael when he drops his snack a while later. He makes the most shocking discovery. In his seemingly harmless rental car, he discovers a gun. When the phone that came with the car rings, Michael answers it and tries to explain the mix-up at the rental company. However, the moment the caller realizes the error, they hang up, which frustrates Michael to no end. Already on thin ice with his parole situation, he decides to abandon the car in a scrap yard when the phone rings again, answering it this time. Michael is relieved to speak to Detective Smith, who sends him an address for a different rental car. He explains that there was a mix-up at the airport and was supposed to be a cover operation for an undercover agent. While lost in the labyrinth of the city looking for the right street later, he goes off the road as instructed. Running into car trouble, he calls Angie for help and requests her to guide him towards the address of the warehouse without asking questions. Despite being skeptical about his intention and motive, Angie helps him out with instructions. When he tries to move the car and is still unable to, the backseat gives way to the biggest shock yet. A bound and gagged woman assuring her that he meant no harm, Michael proceeds to get the gag off. Convinced that she is fine, Michael then tries to untie her hands when she suddenly attacks him and gets hold of the gun. He easily overpowers her, and they both wonder who the other is. Exasperated with the flow of events, Michael asks the woman to stay seated while he tries to figure out his next steps. Finally, back on the road a while later, he tries to follow Angie's instructions and fails to notice the gun slip away, which ends up within grabbing distance for the woman in the backseat. Taking her chance, she asks him to turn the car around while holding him at gunpoint. Smartly speeding up, he continues to assure her that he meant her no harm. He then abruptly hits the brakes, causing the gun to be dropped, but also fired. Fortunately, the bullet only seems to have grazed him before being buried in the headrest. He gets her to obediently stay seated for a while before she gets the door open and tries to cause an accident. He pulls her back just in time when Detective Smith calls again. Reprimanded for being late, Michael learns that Smith already knew that he had left prison a mere 10 days back, and that by leaving the country he had already broken the rules of his parole. Michael tries to assure him that he is on his way to the warehouse, but to no avail. He is threatened with just 5 more minutes, after which he is warned that they will come for him. Completely clueless about the situation, the woman is finally convinced that Michael has no idea about anything. She then introduces herself as Prosecutor Rachel Shabangu and informs him about implicating a criminal named Ben Rhodes, the chief of police. Proving that it is indeed the police that are after her life, the two then clash with Michael wanting no involvement, and the constant screaming causes Rachel to be gagged and bound again as Michael finally approaches the correct address. After looking around the warehouses to find where he was supposed to be, a loud gunshot in the warehouse startled them enough to immediately get back outside. This time, though, Rachel has got rid of her gag and instructs Michael where to go. With 2 cars giving chase, Michael wildly drives while Rachel attacks their pursuant with a gun. Spotting a low wall in the distance, Michael speeds towards it and turns at the last moment, tricking 1 car to crash. Smartly dealing with the remaining car, he falls behind and gives it a bump, causing it to be flipped and eventually explode, guiding Michael through a township later. Rachel asks a friend for help but is turned away. When she spots another friend and pleads for his help, he replies that he would like to stay away since not even his 8-year-old son is safe from being threatened at school. Realizing that Angie could be in trouble as well, Rachel insists Michael call and ask where she is. Getting her voicemail, he leaves a message asking her to stay at the embassy and assures her that he is on his way to get her. Hearing this, Rachel attempts to convince Michael against heading to the embassy, but eventually places a call there herself only to be informed that Angie had recently left. Michael spots Angie just outside the embassy before Rachel points out the thugs. Michael decides to smash into their attackers and is relieved when he sees that Angie is safe. However, he soon realizes that Rachel got shot in the process. Refusing to get to a hospital for fear of being caught, she guides him to a nearby basement parking. Having lost a lot of blood, Rachel realizes that she will not be able to make it, which is why she records her testimony on Michael's phone. She mentions having uncovered trafficking activities in the city and incriminates Ben Rhodes. She insists Michael gets to the courthouse to specifically find Judge James Mazuka since he is the only one they can trust. With her dying breath, Rachel bestows Michael with the responsibility of doing the right thing with her testimony. Saddened by her passing and thinking of the delegated responsibility as a burden, Michael just sits and cannot believe what he was just involved in. Nonetheless, he has to continue to make Rachel's death a reason worth dying for. In doing so, he dumps Rachel's body in the parking basement. Soon enough, Michael tries calling Detective Smith and realizes just how much of a disadvantage he is at being in a new city on his own. Out of nowhere, a man attempts to rob Michael, who is not in the mood, and aims his gun at him. The man then runs away and Michael's phone starts ringing. Adding to his woes, he is then told that he is booked and wanted for Rachel's murder. The detective on the other line makes sure Michael understands he knows everything about him and threatens his wife. Weirdly enough, the sadistic chuckle from the detective causes Michael to remember his psychopathic dad, and with nothing left to lose now, he threatens the detective just the same and squares right to his face. After taking off, he immediately tries getting in touch with Judge Mazuka and leaves a message informing him that he is on his way to the courthouse with Rachel's testimony. However, he realizes that it would be easier said than done while being wanted for murder, since cops were everywhere and his face was on the news for all to see. He continues driving and hears cop cars all around him and knows he needs to switch things up. To avoid running into the police, he is forced to hide, and to avoid people recognizing him, he ensures that he doesn't stay too long. Going ahead, he hits a low battery notification, and as he continues driving, he spots the oncoming police yet again and quickly heads to a drive-through car wash to avoid being seen. While the car is clean, he decides to give Angie a call and reaches her voicemail. He reminisces about the happy times that they had spent with each other. Regarding him being a wanted criminal now, he assures her that he will certainly prove his innocence, and no matter what anyone tells her, he will prove them all wrong. As he ends the call, the car wash does the same and he heads back to the streets. As he continues driving, he notices graffiti all over the place and gets an idea. He pulls up next to a man and wants his minivan spray to avoid detection. Instead of money, he offers the guy his watch and says that he just needs the car to be a different color. He drives his van into a warehouse and parks it up. The crew there get to work, and after little to no time, they finish up. Exiting the place, he sees that he now drives a bright red minivan. On his way to the courthouse, Michael is contacted by Judge Mazuka, who tells him that it is of utmost importance that he receives Rachel's testimony. Judge Mazuka then forbids Michael from approaching the courthouse, since the police will expect him to get there, and instead suggests that they meet elsewhere. Just then, Michael is pulled over by a police officer for being on the phone while driving. As the cop approaches and tells Michael to put his window down, Michael does so with a gun in his other hand. The police officer asks for his license and Michael does not move. He is then told to get out of the car and is about to use his gun against the cop when some local thugs drive past and grab the cop's attention. With a sigh of relief, he immediately calls Judge Mazuka again. But just as Michael informs him about his location, his phone runs out of battery. When he plugs in the portable charger, it doesn't seem to work, which leaves Michael with just one option, which was his original plan: to get to the courthouse himself and deliver Rachel's testimony to Judge Mazuka. Almost immediately, though, the police are onto him and a car chase takes place. Turning down random roads and narrowly avoiding several other cars in traffic to avoid being caught, Michael is eventually compelled to take a narrow dumpster lane with the police still close behind him. He crashes into some scaffolding, which comes tumbling down directly in the path of the police. He immediately uses his now charged phone to call Judge Mazuka when a police car rams into him. Going in the opposite direction of the courthouse now, Michael sees a massive trailer across the street and crashes into a supermarket instead. The trailer crashes into the police car behind him and Michael continues driving through the supermarket while another police car follows him in and opens fire. At the end of the aisle, the police car stops while he keeps going through the storage and out back on the road. However, all of this has still not deterred the police from keeping up the chase. Surrounded by numerous police vehicles, Michael finally comes to a halt in front of the barricaded courthouse. Determined to make his stand, he forces his way through the barriers, causing chaos among the media gathered outside. In a desperate move, he grabs the nearest reporter and holds him at gunpoint, demanding to see Judge Mazuka. Detective Smith arrives on the scene, declaring that Michael is a fugitive whose demands should not be entertained, leading to a tense standoff between the police officer in charge and the detective. Despite the escalating situation, Michael continues to insist on seeing Judge Mazuka. When Detective Smith falsely claims that Michael has a bomb and tries to shoot him, Michael seizes the moment. He plays Rachel's recorded testimony through the hostage reporter's microphone, exposing the corruption of the city's chief of police to the world. This revelation leads to the arrest of Ben Rhodes and several high-ranking officers within the police department. Later, as Michael recovers in the hospital, Angie speaks to the media, praising his actions and his bravery. Meanwhile, the minivan is back at the rental company, ready for its next adventure. Thanks for sticking around until the end. Be sure to check out my other videos for more exciting recaps.